So here we are, diving into my analysis of the second episode of the Mother's Rosario arc of Sword Art Online, the so-called best arc of the show. Yeah, still pretty terrible. This episode does not change that one bit. It is more of the same recycled garbage we have been suffering through, like reheated leftovers that somehow taste even worse the second time around. Boring visuals, awkward dialogue, and pointless filler. Everything that makes Sword Art Online endlessly frustrating is back in full force. Buckle up, because I am about to rip it apart, piece by painfully unearned piece. And if you are mad at me for criticizing this arc, then you need to grow up and see the world as it actually is. You do not get to silence people just because they do not like the same show you do. Honest opinions are allowed, criticism is allowed, and no piece of media is immune from being called out. Liking something does not give you ownership over it, and it definitely does not give you the right to tell others to shut up. I am not going to go easy on this arc. In fact, seeing so many people mindlessly glazing it just makes me want to bash it even harder. Blind praise does not make something good. It just exposes how low the standards are. The more people pretend this arc is flawless, the more obvious its problems become. If anything, the nonstop defending only motivates me to point out every flaw even more clearly. If you do not like me, I do not care one bit. If earning your approval means I have to lie, lower my standards, and say exactly what you want to hear, then I do not want or need your approval. It is useless to me. I would rather be honest and critical than fake positivity for the sake of pleasing random strangers on the internet. This video is not here to validate feelings or add to the circle jerk. It is here to say what needs to be said. I am not here to make friends. I am here to rip Sword Art Online apart and expose all of its flaws. I am not going to stop just because some people get upset or defensive. Being mad does not make the writing better, and hurt feelings do not magically fix bad storytelling. If criticism bothers you this much, that is not my problem. This show earned every complaint it gets. The episode opens with Asuna saying she is going to the island tomorrow to fight Zekken. And the rest of the girls act like this is the event of the year. They are thrilled. They cannot wait. This is their big plan, watching Asuna fight in a video game. And that is just kind of sad. Not tragic sad, hilariously sad. Like this is the peak of their social calendar. No hobbies, no goals. No lives outside of hovering around Asuna and reacting to whatever she does next. The show plays it like a fun group moment, but all it really shows is how empty these characters are. Their greatest excitement is being spectators in another story. They do not get arcs. They get front row seats. Mother's Rosario is supposed to focus on Asuna stepping into her own story. Instead, it accidentally reminds you that everyone around her exists purely to clap when she swings a sword. And that is not friendship. That is a fan club. The background characters in this show are not people. They are props. Their only job is to stand around and glaze the main characters so they look cooler by comparison. They exist to gasp, cheer, and say things like, "Wow, she's amazing." None of them have opinions that matter. None of them challenge anything. They do not grow. They do not change. They are just there to remind you how special the leads are at all times. It gets especially bad in Mother's Rosario. Every crowd scene feels fake because the people in it are not reacting like humans. They are reacting like an audience inside the show, clapping on cue so you know when to be impressed. When a story treats its world like a stage and its characters like cardboard cutouts, it stops feeling alive. Sword Art Online does not build a world. It builds a spotlight and makes sure it never turns off. It will never not be creepy how Yui calls Kirito daddy. And before anyone rushes in to defend it, no, this is not cute. This is weird. Very weird. The show wants us to accept this as normal family bonding. Like this is just a sweet little detail and not something that makes a normal person stop and stare at the screen. Let us be clear. Kirito is a teenage boy. Yui is a digital child who just decided he is her father. Not because he raised her. Not because time passed. Not because anything earned happened. She just shows up and locks it in. Daddy. Forever. And the show never questions it. No one ever says this is odd. No one suggests maybe we use a different word. Everyone just smiles and moves on like this is a normal thing that happens every day in video games. It is like the writers are daring you to feel uncomfortable and then judging you for it. What makes it worse is that the story keeps asking us to take emotional moments seriously while this is happening. You are supposed to feel warmth. You are supposed to feel family love. Meanwhile, half the audience is stuck thinking, why is this happening and why does the show think this is fine? Mother's Rosario is supposed to be this mature, emotional arc about loss and memory. And yet it still drags along this awkward mess and pretends it adds heart. It does not, it adds noise. It pulls you out of the moment. And reminds you that Sword Art Online still has no idea how humans talk to each other. The funniest part is that in the English dub, the voice actress for Yui is older than the voice actor for Kirito. So now the situation is not just creepy, it is also confusing on a basic level. You are hearing a grown adult woman call a younger man daddy with full sincerity, and the show expects you to feel touched instead of alarmed. It completely breaks whatever weak illusion they were aiming for. This is supposed to sound like a child talking to a parent. Instead, it sounds like a bad joke that no one stopped. Every emotional scene gets undercut by the simple fact that your ears know something is wrong even if the script pretends nothing is happening. It is one more example of Sword Art Online asking the audience to shut off their brain, their instincts, and apparently their hearing, just to make the scene work. And if a story only functions when you stop thinking, then maybe the story is the problem. And before anyone tries to escape to the Japanese version, no, that does not save it either. In the original version, the voice actors for the two characters are the same age. That is still weird. It does not fix the problem. It just changes the flavor of it. You are still listening to two adults have a forced parent-child dynamic that was never earned. The show still wants you to accept it without question. Equal ages do not make the situation better. If anything, it makes it clearer how artificial the whole thing is. No matter the language, the issue stays the same. This is not sweet. This is not natural. It is just another moment where Sword Art Online insists something is emotional and hopes repetition will make it true. The funniest part is that all the voice actors for these characters are adults, yet they are supposed to be playing teenagers, and no, this does not fit at all. You are listening to grown adults try to sell teenage drama with complete seriousness, and it never quite works. These characters talk like adults, react like adults, and carry emotional weight that does not match their ages. The show keeps telling us they are kids, but everything about their voices says otherwise. It creates this constant mismatch where nothing feels natural. It becomes especially noticeable in emotional scenes. You are meant to believe this is teenage pain and growth, but it sounds like a room full of adults pretending very hard. The illusion falls apart the moment you stop and think about it. Sword Art Online wants the freedom of teenage characters with the polish of adult performances. Instead, it gets the worst of both. Characters who are too young to make sense and too old to sound believable. We then cut to Asuna in the real world after she logs out of the game. She is rich, of course she is. She has a massive room and a closet full of outfits like this is a fashion catalog. And you have to ask why the writer thought this was a good idea. What does this add? All it does is make Asuna look like a spoiled brat who has never had to work for anything in her life. She already wins every fight in the game. Now she also wins at money. It completely kills any sense of struggle. There is no underdog story here. There is no climb. She starts at the top and stays there. The show wants us to admire her, but it forgets that watching someone with everything handed to them is not inspiring. It is boring. Imagine how much better this would be if Asuna actually had to work for something. If she had limits. If her strength came from effort instead of privilege. But Sword Art Online does not want an underdog. It wants a perfect character and hopes that will be enough. It is also 15 degrees Celsius in the room, which is 59 degrees Fahrenheit. Why would Asuna make it so cold? You can literally see her breath. She lives in a mansion, so she should have the means to make it warm and comfortable inside her own room. Sword Art Online does these little odd details that make you pause and wonder if anyone involved actually thought about realism. Instead of feeling immersive, the scene just makes you question why the character is doing something so unnecessary and uncomfortable. Is Asuna trying to make herself sick or something? It makes no sense to leave the room so cold during winter. Sword Art Online keeps putting characters in situations that defy logic just to create mood or filler drama. Instead of being believable, it just makes you wonder why anyone would act like this in real life. Scenes like this just make the characters look incompetent. Asuna cannot even get the temperature in her room right. Why even show this scene at all? They could have left it out entirely and I would not be criticizing anything. Sword Art Online has a habit of including pointless moments that do not develop the plot or characters, and instead only make the characters look foolish. There is a new opening, and it finally matches the visuals of this arc. Great. Too bad this is the second episode in the arc. Why did they not start with a new opening for the first episode? It makes no sense to wait and cause unnecessary confusion. Sword Art Online loves making arbitrary choices like this, as if the audience will just accept them without question. Instead of being a smooth, coherent introduction, the delayed opening just feels sloppy and poorly planned. Asuna even has a housekeeper. Of course she does. Why settle for just being rich and good at games when you can also have someone cater to your every whim? This just makes her seem too perfect. Everything about her is too perfect. She has the looks. She has the money. She has the stats in the game. She even has personal staff in her home. There is nothing about her that struggles. Nothing that makes her relatable. That is the problem. A character with everything handed to them is not interesting. You cannot root for someone who cannot fail, who never has to fight for anything real. All you can do is sit there and watch someone who has literally no obstacles and call it drama. Sword Art Online seems to think perfection is enough to make a character compelling. It is not. It is exhausting and boring. Next, Asuna goes to eat dinner with her mother, Kuko. Another meal. Another scene where the characters sit around, chew, and talk while drinking something. Sword Art Online is full of these moments. Exposition dumping disguised as casual conversation. The story stops, the characters stop, and all we get is dialogue explaining things we already guessed or do not care about. It is exhausting. The show thinks eating and talking makes characters relatable. It does not. It makes the audience check the clock. These scenes are filler dressed up as drama, and they drag the pacing down every single time. Instead of showing us something interesting, the show just parks its characters at a table and waits for the next plot point to arrive. It is lazy, obvious, and painfully repetitive. Asuna is late for dinner and her mother scolds her. She demands Asuna be 5 minutes early next time. 5 minutes. That is the big problem now. The show treats this like it is important enough to waste actual screen time on. Who cares? Who honestly cares that Asuna is 5 minutes late to a meal? How is this an interesting plot point? Sword Art Online has a knack for turning the tiniest, most mundane details into dramatic moments. The result is that the story drags and the audience is left wondering why we are even watching this. This is exposition and filler wrapped up in fake stakes. It adds nothing to the characters, the plot, or the emotional arc. It is just time passing on the screen while the writers pretend it matters. It is hilarious how they cram over 2 years worth of story into 14 episodes. 90% of the floors in Sword Art Online get skipped. Entire arcs, entire battles, gone. Poof. And yet somehow, we have time to waste on Asuna eating dinner in the real world. Chewing, talking, drinking, a boring, mundane task stretched into an important scene. The sense of priorities in this show is amazingly awful. Epic adventures? Gone. Character growth? Skipped. Ordinary meals? Absolutely essential. It is like the writers thought they could fool us into thinking boring dinner etiquette is as exciting as life and death battles. Sword Art Online is great at making the audience feel like nothing matters except what it tells us should matter. And apparently what really matters is a rich girl being on time for dinner. It is laughable how the show is called Sword Art Online, and yet here we are, watching Asuna eat dinner with her mother in the real world. Yes, that is a scene. That is part of the show. What does this have to do with Sword Art Online? Oh, right. Nothing at all. Absolutely zero. You could cut the game entirely from this episode and nothing would change. At this point, they might as well change the name of the show to something more accurate, like Rich Girl Eats Dinner While We Pretend This Matters. That would at least be honest. The show has officially replaced thrilling virtual reality battles with polite table manners. And we are expected to feel tension. It is ridiculous. It is absurd. And it is exactly why this arc is so painfully funny and boring to watch. And the food in this anime does not even look appetizing. It is not cute. It is not mouth-watering. It looks like slop. Like something scraped off the bottom of a pot and dumped on a plate. They cannot even get the basics right. You are supposed to sit there and watch characters eat and feel like it is a normal, relatable moment, and instead you just wonder how they survive lunch in real life. Sword Art Online spends time on these fake emotional dinner scenes, and then cannot make the food look even remotely believable. It is a perfect metaphor for the show itself, all style and drama, none of the substance that actually matters. Asuna saying that the food looks good does not magically make the food look good. No amount of dialogue will fix the fact that it still looks like slop. Instead of having Asuna tell us the food looks good, they could have actually shown us that it looks good. Just a thought. A little visual storytelling, maybe? Apparently, the writer has never heard of the show. Do not tell rule. Sword Art Online seems to think that if a character says something is nice or emotional, the audience will automatically feel it. Spoiler, we do not. Words cannot replace what your eyes should be seeing. It is just another lazy shortcut, another reminder that the show would rather have characters narrate their feelings than actually create moments that feel real. Kyuko gets mad at Asuna for playing the game, but then Asuna says she was doing homework with her friends, and somehow this is supposed to matter. Who cares? Really, who cares? This is presented as some kind of conflict, like the stakes are high. And yet it is nothing. It changes nothing. It adds zero tension. The show treats it like a plot point worth wasting screen time on, which just makes you wonder what the writer was thinking. This is filler pretending to be drama. It is not interesting. It is not important. It is just another unnecessary pause while the story tries to act like it has real stakes. Sword Art Online has a talent for elevating mundane, trivial details and calling them storytelling. The result is a lot of wasted time and a lot of head-scratching. Asuna mentions that her friends live so far away, so it is more convenient for them to meet in the game. Convenient, sure. But wait. Does social media not exist in this world or something? Why is meeting in the game the only option? In real life, people can video call, send messages, text, email, whatever. They do not all have to log into a game at the same time just to hang out. Sword Art Online acts like in-game meetings are the only way humans can connect, which makes zero sense. It is not clever. It is just lazy. The writers want these characters together in the virtual world, so they pretend there is no other way to do it. It is one more example of the show-bending logic to fit the plot, instead of letting characters act like real people who exist outside the game. And yes, it is ridiculous. If full-dive virtual reality exists in this universe, then surely simple video messaging apps should also be a thing. Like, come on. We are supposed to believe that people have access to mind-blowing virtual reality technology, but cannot pick up a phone or open an app to talk to their friends. Sword Art Online wants us to accept this as normal. It wants us to suspend logic just so the plot can shove everyone into the game at the same time. But it is absurd. It is lazy world building. If you're going to give us high-tech VR that lets people live entire lives in a digital world, the very least you could do is let communication outside the game feel believable. Instead, the show chooses convenience over sense, and we are supposed to nod along. Kyuko says that Asuna will just fool around with her friends in the game, and that doing homework is not a team activity. Okay, but the fact that they even have to do homework at all is confusing. Just get artificial intelligence to do it for them. That is what people do in the real world. Who even does homework by hand anymore? This is supposed to be a near-future society with insane technology, and yet the kids are still grinding through math problems like it is 1950. Sword Art Online insists this is important character development or a moral lesson, but it is just pointless busy work. It adds nothing to the story and just makes you wonder if the writers even thought about the world they were building. And again, why are we wasting time on this? Who even cares how Asuna is doing homework? What does this have to do with anything at all? The show is called Sword Art Online, and yet here we are talking about homework. Not fighting, not leveling up. Not exploring a virtual world. Homework. That is the drama they decided to focus on. The story pretends to be exciting while we are left staring at a character filling out a worksheet. It is absurd and hilarious at the same time. Kyuko says that Asuna does not have time to play around anymore since she is 2 years behind everyone else, trapped in Sword Art Online all that time. She says Asuna should be studying hard to make up for lost time. Why does this even matter? How is Asuna being behind relevant to the plot at all? We were promised exciting battles, insane virtual reality technology, life or death stakes, and here we are. Talking about study schedules. Sword Art Online has a gift for taking what should be thrilling sci-fi adventures and turning them into domestic lectures about productivity. The excitement is gone, replaced by reminders that Asuna needs to hit the books. It is absurd, boring, and completely irrelevant to anything we actually came here to watch. Asuna says that she has been getting good grades, but Kyuko does not think it matters because the school Asuna is going to is not good. And we are supposed to care about this? Why are we wasting time on this? How does this matter to anything we are supposed to be watching? If I wanted to see a mom scolding their kid about grades, I can already get that for free in real life. People watch shows for escapism, not for boring filler like this. Sword Art Online promised epic battles, high-tech virtual worlds, and life or death stakes. Instead, it gives us a tedious lecture about school rankings and GPA. It is absurd, pointless, and makes you wonder why anyone thought this was worth including. Kyuko decides to hire Asuna a tutor. A real tutor. One that will come to the house in person, not some virtual tutor or online lesson. Asuna is mad because she does not get a say in it, and we are supposed to care about this? Why does it matter what kind of tutor Asuna gets? It is completely irrelevant to anything happening in the story. Sword Art Online spends actual screen time on this nonsense, as if the audience really needs a debate about tutoring logistics. We are watching a show about virtual worlds and epic battles, and instead we get arguments over homework supervision. It is absurd and completely pointless. Who watched this show to find out if Asuna will get a real tutor or a virtual one? Seriously. That is not the point of Sword Art Online. The show is supposed to be about high-stakes battles, amazing technology, and life-or-death drama in a virtual world. Not homework logistics. Not tutor debates. Not in-person versus online lessons. Yet here we are, wasting time on every irrelevant detail, and the audience is left thinking, why am I even watching this? It is ridiculous, and it perfectly sums up how this arc mistakes mundane, real-life problems for meaningful storytelling. Kyuko wants Asuna to transfer to a better school. Asuna is mad because she does not want to change schools and she likes her current one. And, again, who cares? How is Asuna switching schools important to the plot at all? It does not affect the game, it does not affect her friends, it does not even affect her character in any meaningful way. It is just filler pretending to be drama. Sword Art Online promises epic adventures and virtual reality stakes, yet it constantly drags the audience into mundane arguments about school choice. It is absurd and completely irrelevant, and it makes the story feel like it has no idea what it wants to be. Asuna is not even bothered about taking an extra year or two to get into college. In fact, she might not even want to go to college at all. And that right there shows why making her a rich, spoiled brat was a terrible decision. Since she already has everything, she does not have to try hard for anything. There is no struggle. No stakes, no reason to root for her. Sword Art Online wants us to admire Asuna, but all it really does is show us a character who floats through life with zero effort. That is not inspiring. That is boring. And it makes every plot point about school, grades, and tutors feel even more ridiculous. Asuna thinks her mother is limiting her options. So what? Really? How is this even relevant to anything happening in the story? Sword Art Online treats it like a big emotional conflict, but it is just another mundane real-world gripe slapped into a show that is supposed to be about epic virtual battles and life-or-death stakes. The audience is left wondering why we are supposed to care about parental control when the actual story is being completely ignored. It is absurd, pointless, and yet the show acts like this is the drama we have been waiting for. Kyuko does not want Asuna to marry Kirito. She has already picked out some other man named Yuya for her to marry, and this is just pointless filler. We already know Asuna is not going to leave Kirito. Everyone over the age of 5 knows that. Yet the show drags this out like it is some kind of dramatic twist. Sword Art Online loves wasting screen time on conflicts that literally no one cares about. It adds zero tension, zero stakes, and zero interest. We are just sitting there watching characters argue about something that the audience has already figured out from episode 1. It is ridiculous. Kyuko investigated Kirito and does not think he is a good choice for Asuna. But if she actually investigated him, She should know that he is the hero who beat Sword Art Online and freed thousands of players from being trapped in the death game, including Asuna. Sword Art Online keeps having characters act clueless or overly skeptical for the sake of drama, even when the audience knows they should have all the information. It makes the disapproval of Kyuko feel petty and pointless rather than justified. It is like the writer completely forgot what happened in the previous arcs just to make Kyuko seem more skeptical or strict. Sword Art Online constantly ignores its own history whenever it wants to manufacture drama or tension. Instead of building on established events, the show rewrites logic on the fly, making characters act in ways that are inconsistent and frustrating for anyone paying attention. Asuna brings up Nobuyuki Shugu, but Kyuko quickly shuts her down. Even the characters in the show do not want to talk about him anymore, which is hilarious. He was such a poorly written character that the writers clearly just want us to forget he ever existed. Poof. Gone. Nothing to see here. It is funny because the show is basically admitting defeat. Even the plot and the characters are like, yeah, let us pretend this terrible villain from one of the worst arcs in the show was never a thing. Sword Art Online has a knack for sweeping mistakes under the rug and hoping no one notices. Kyuko says it was not her choice for Asuna to marry Nobuyuki Shugu. Apparently, the father of Asuna made that decision. Typical. Blame everyone else and act like you had no part in it. Sword Art Online loves these little moments where women get to pass the responsibility around instead of owning it. It is supposed to add drama, but it mostly just makes you roll your eyes. The show seems to think this family drama is important, but really it just highlights how messy and pointless all these real-world conflicts are compared to the virtual battles we actually came to watch. Asuna will choose who to marry, and her mom agrees, so long as the man is from a good family. She does not think Kirito is worthy. And for once, I actually agree with a character in this show. Kirito is a terrible character. He lies, he cheats, and he has zero riz. Watching people treat him like some kind of perfect hero is absurd. Kyuko is the only one with a hint of sense here, and it is almost shocking. Sword Art Online tries to sell Kirito as a great catch, but when you actually look at him, he is bland, selfish, and uninteresting. Finally, a character calling him out makes perfect sense, and it is the only moment in this arc that feels grounded. It is good to see a character in the show who does not worship Kirito, and think he is the greatest of all time. Finally, a voice of reason. Everyone else in Sword Art Online acts like he is flawless, like every move he makes is heroic, and it is exhausting. Kyuko calling him out is a breath of fresh air. For once, the show gives us someone who treats Kirito like the mediocre, annoying, overhyped character he actually is, and it is glorious to watch. Asuna says that she killed people back in Sword Art Online, but that is not even true. She did not kill anyone, at least not on screen. Maybe it was expanded upon in the source material or something, but this is the anime. Sword Art Online loves giving characters faux gravitas by making them claim dark pasts, even when it makes no sense in the context of the story. It is supposed to sound edgy, but all it really does is confuse the audience and highlight sloppy writing. Asuna calls out her mom, complaining that she was not born into a rich and important family. What a rude thing to say. Her mom is just trying to do what is best for her daughter, and this is how Asuna repays the favor, by whining about her birth status. It makes Asuna seem like a spoiled little brat. Sword Art Online keeps trying to make Asuna relatable or sympathetic, but moments like this just highlight how entitled she is. Instead of feeling for her, you are left thinking, wow, this kid has everything and still complains. The writer is awful at creating relatable characters. Every single one of them just does and says things that make you want to hate them. They act, talk, and react in ways that feel fake, forced, or downright annoying. Instead of drawing you in, they push you away. Sword Art Online seems to think that giving characters flashy lines or emotional scenes automatically makes them compelling. It does not. It just makes the audience roll their eyes and wonder why they are supposed to care about anyone on screen. This is yet another reason why making Asuna rich from the start was a terrible choice. Since she already has money and comes from a wealthy family, she does not need to marry into one. She can literally pick whoever she wants. That might sound like freedom, but in storytelling terms, it kills all tension. There are no stakes, no real conflict. The The writers try to manufacture drama out of something that is completely irrelevant, and it falls flat. Sword Art Online wants us to care about romantic decisions of Asuna. But when she has everything handed to her, there is nothing left to struggle with, and that makes the whole arc feel pointless. It would be so much better if Asuna was from a poor family and actually had to make a tough choice. Does she marry into a rich family and get set for life, but be unhappy? Or does she marry Kirito and end up struggling financially? That would create real stakes, real conflict, and actually make us care about her decisions. Instead, Sword Art Online gives us a rich, perfect Asuna who literally has nothing to worry about. The show pretends her life is dramatic. But when a character already has everything handed to them, there is no tension. Nothing she does matters. And that makes the entire arc feel hollow. Asuna has a picture of herself and Kirito on her phone, and honestly, that is just sad. Why do the characters in this show idolize him so much? He is an awful character. He lies, he cheats, and he has zero personality beyond being the hero. Yet everyone acts like he is flawless, like every move he makes is worthy of worship. Sword Art Online keeps shoving this idolization down our throats, and it is exhausting. The fact that Asuna literally keeps a photo of him is just a reminder of how overhyped and unearned his hero status really is. The sad part is that there are probably viewers who actually think this is cute or heartwarming. That is hilarious to think about. This terrible show somehow managed to make people emotional over moments that are mostly forced, illogical, or padding. Sword Art Online might want us to feel sentiment, but for anyone paying attention, it comes off as absurd and unintentionally funny. It is wild to imagine anyone genuinely moved by this when the writing, pacing, and character logic are so consistently ridiculous. There's a flashback showing how Kirito said he wanted to go from just playing games to being a creator. Not for fun. Not for games. No, he wants to make a human-machine interface to replace the full dive technology they already use. And of course, the writer constantly makes Kirito smart. Brilliant. Genius. Inventor of revolutionary technology by teenage age. Everything he does is somehow groundbreaking, and we are supposed to be impressed. Sword Art Online loves inflating the intelligence of Kirito because apparently being talented in one game is not enough. He has to be a prodigy in everything else too, while still being bland, boring, and completely uninteresting as a character. It would make a lot more sense for Kirito to just become a game creator instead of whatever it is the show wants him to be. But of course, that would be too simple. I guess the author also wants Kirito to be the inventor of the technology in his other series, Axel World. So he has to be some kind of super genius who is good at everything. Nothing can ever just be normal or believable. Sword Art Online keeps piling on these absurd achievements to make Kirito seem impressive, while forgetting that a character who is perfect at everything is not actually interesting. It just makes him feel like a walking plot device. And if Kirito does end up developing this miracle technology, then he is going to be very rich. So Asuna choosing to be with him would not go against the wishes of her mother. It is overly convenient how the writer is just going to make it seem like Kirito is suddenly worthy. Sword Art Online loves these lazy fixes that solve character conflicts without any real effort or logical build-up. Instead of exploring the tension or making Kirito earn respect, the show just hands it to him on a silver platter, making the resolution feel hollow and manufactured. Another flashback shows Kirito telling Asuna that she is stronger than he is. And that is laughable. Of course, in order to make Asuna seem cool, the writers have to have Kirito say it. She cannot just be impressive on her own. No, she needs the male hero to constantly validate her. Sword Art Online has this weird obsession with propping up characters artificially. Instead of letting Asuna earn respect naturally, they rely on Kirito to declare it for her, and it comes off as forced and ridiculous. And this scene is not even a real flashback. It was not present in the actual episode when it originally aired. Nope, it is a retcon from the creators. Sword Art Online loves rewriting its own history whenever it suits the plot. Nothing is sacred. Nothing is consistent. They just drop in new memories to make the story fit their current ideas, whether it makes sense or not. It is absurd, and it makes you wonder if the writers even care about continuity, or if they just hope the audience will nod along and forget what actually happened. Asuna cries because she was a warrior in the game, but in real life she is nothing. Yeah, that is how games work. Newsflash, you do not get real-life superpowers just because you are good at a video game. Why would you be the same person in the game and in real life? It makes no sense. Even the best gamers are just ordinary people when they log off. They do not suddenly gain combat skills, magic swords, or death-defying abilities. Sword Art Online acts like this is some kind of deep emotional struggle, but it is just ridiculous. Being a hero in a virtual world does not automatically translate to the real world, and yet the show wants us to feel sorry for her anyway. Asuna complains about not having any real power in the real world. Duh, nobody does. Is Asuna serious about this? Did she really think she is owed real power just because she was strong in the game? That is not how reality works. Being a high-level player in a video game does not magically make you influential or unstoppable in real life. Sword Art Online treats this as some kind of deep emotional conflict, but it is just absurd. It makes Asuna look entitled and clueless, and it is hard to feel sympathy when the problem she is crying over is literally just basic reality. The next scene takes place in Alfheim Online. Kirito is just lying on the field, chilling, and Asuna shows up. She says it is rare for him to be so punctual. It is meant to be some cute, heartfelt moment, but it is just dumb. There is no tension, no stakes, no action. Just two characters lounging in a virtual meadow like nothing in the world matters. Sword Art Online has this habit of replacing exciting plot points with meaningless downtime, and it kills any momentum. Instead of feeling invested, you are left thinking, why am I watching this? And why would anyone play a game just to lie around in a field? That does not sound exciting at all. In a virtual reality game with infinite possibilities, you could be exploring, fighting, building, or doing literally anything. But the characters just decide to sit or lie around like it is the peak of entertainment. Boring. Sword Art Online loves turning what could be thrilling adventures into lazy downtime. Instead of showing the possibilities of virtual reality, it shows characters twiddling their thumbs and somehow expects us to care. It is also convenient how the animators can just reuse the same assets from Season 1, since the setting is the same. Sure, it might be easier for them, but for viewers it just makes everything feel boring and repetitive. Sword Art Online often leans on this kind of shortcut, prioritizing production convenience over keeping the world fresh or visually interesting. The result is a sense of déjà vu that makes even new episodes feel stale. Kirito and Asuna see a rabbit and start reminiscing about how they ate rabbit stew back in Sword Art Online. It is supposed to feel sentimental, like a warm, nostalgic moment, but honestly, I could not care less. Why would I? It is a rabbit. It is stew, and it happened in a virtual world we already know was dangerous and over the top. Sword Art Online tries to manufacture emotion out of the most random, meaningless details, and it fails spectacularly. Instead of feeling nostalgic, all I felt was annoyed that this got screen time while actual story and action were ignored. Plus, it is hilarious how Kirito and Asuna only remember the good parts of Sword Art Online. Oh yes, the rabbit stew, the cute moments, the teamwork. Nothing else matters. Being trapped in a virtual death game should have been terrifying, traumatizing, and life-changing. And yet, they act like it was the time of their lives. Sword Art Online has a weird way of rewriting trauma into nostalgia. Instead of exploring the horror or tension of being trapped in a deadly game, we get warm, fuzzy memories that feel completely disconnected from reality. It is absurd and unintentionally funny. Why are we even wasting time talking about this? It feels like the show is just stuffing in filler to pad the runtime. Nothing here matters. Nothing moves the story forward. If viewers care about Sword Art Online so much, they can just go back and rewatch the first season. There's no need to force everyone else to sit through these pointless, padded moments. Sword Art Online keeps pretending that mundane, irrelevant scenes are important, and it only serves to make the audience question why they are still watching. It is lazy storytelling at its finest. It is revealed that Kirito asked Zekken a question during their fight. He asked if Zekken was full-time in this world. And Zekken just grinned in response. Why is that supposed to be important? It adds nothing to the fight, nothing to the story, and nothing to the characters. It is filler dressed up as a dramatic moment. Sword Art Online loves giving us tiny, meaningless interactions and pretending they matter. The audience is left thinking, why am I paying attention to this at all? It is absurd. Asuna does not understand what Kirito is talking about. And neither do I. Kirito just says random stuff and expects everyone else to be on the same page. even though he is literally spouting nonsense that is only meant to sound important. Sword Art Online treats these moments like deep strategy or character insight, but it is really just the writers throwing words at the screen and hoping we will pretend they matter. It is confusing, meaningless, and honestly kind of hilarious. The other girls in the harem are annoyed about how Kirito and Asuna are so lovey-dovey. But come on, they are a couple. What did anyone expect was going to happen? Sword Art Online treats this like a big dramatic conflict, but it is completely predictable and kind of ridiculous. The audience already knows how the relationship of Kirito and Asuna works, so making the other characters upset feels forced and unnecessary. Also, for the people who try to argue that Sword Art Online is not a harem show, this scene completely debunks that argument. If it were not a harem, the other girls would not be so jealous or annoyed. The show keeps hammering home that Kirito has multiple female characters orbiting him, all reacting to his relationship with Asuna. It does not matter how much the creators try to deny it, the harem dynamics are obvious, predictable, and unavoidable. Asuna finally goes to duel Zekken. We are 15 minutes into a 23-minute episode, including the opening and ending, and finally, something relevant actually happens. Everything up to this point was filler, pointless exposition, or characters whining about homework and dinner. And now, at last, we get actual action. Sword Art Online has a habit of padding episodes with meaningless scenes. So, when anything plot relevant finally happens, it feels like a small miracle. It is about time. Zekken has 67 wins in a row. And it is funny how the show makes a 67 joke over a decade before that even became a thing. Sword Art Online clearly did not care about timing or relevance. It just threw in a random number and hoped it would land. Somehow it comes off as unintentionally hilarious. The writers want us to be impressed by this record. But the joke itself is so dated and random that it just makes the scene feel silly instead of epic. The reference actually fits, though. Just like the 67 meme is annoying brain rot, so is the show itself. Sword Art Online lulls you with flashy numbers, pointless jokes, and overhyped drama, and it sticks in your head like something you cannot escape. It is absurd, repetitive, and exhausting, just like the meme it accidentally predicts. The show wants to feel clever, but it ends up feeling like a long, drawn-out version of the same annoying joke. Turns out Zekken is actually a little girl. The show wants this to be a big surprise, like some shocking reveal. But of course, they already showed it in the opening and ending. So the twist is meaningless, and the audience sees it coming a mile away. Sword Art Online loves pretending its reveals are shocking, but when the setup ruins the payoff, it just comes off as lazy and laughable. And what is the point of making Zekken look like a big, strong man, only for her to actually be a little girl? Why not just make her a little girl from the start? It does not make sense. The author is clearly just trying to trick the audience for drama that does not exist. Sword Art Online loves these pointless twists that serve no purpose other than to feel clever, and it just ends up looking silly. Instead of building tension or character, we get a fake out that accomplishes nothing and makes you wonder why you are still watching. The characters even referred to Zekken with male pronouns in the previous episode, so when they now say she was a girl all along, they are clearly lying or at least conveniently rewriting what happened. Sword Art Online loves these little continuity issues, pretending the audience will just go along with it. It is sloppy, confusing, and makes the so-called reveal even more pointless. The show acts like it is clever, but it is really just papering over mistakes and hoping no one notices. Now it makes sense why Klein was part of the crowd that challenged Zekken in the previous episode. Klein is nothing more than a desperate simp who cannot resist trying to get the attention of a girl. Sword Art Online loves turning minor characters into comic relief through cringe motivations like this. Instead of meaningful involvement, the presence of Klein is just a predictable, eye-roll-worthy attempt at humor. It is funny in a sad way. He acts like he is heroic, but really he is just a pawn for the writer's idea of comedy. The character design for Zekken is so bland and boring. But I guess that is par for the course since all the other characters have equally boring, generic designs. Sword Art Online seems to think that flashy fights and overpowered stats make up for visual dullness, but it does not. When every character looks like a recycled anime template, nothing stands out, and the world feels uninspired. The big reveal of Zekken might have been shocking on paper, but the bland design makes it impossible to care visually. The headband that Yuuki is wearing is also suspiciously similar to the one worn by Klein back in Sword Art Online in real life. The author did not even bother to really change the color. It feels less like a design choice and more like laziness. Sword Art Online already struggles with bland and repetitive character designs, and this just makes it even more obvious. When characters start sharing accessories like hand-me-downs, it is hard to take the visual design seriously. Fans are probably eating this up. But I guess expecting competent character design and unique looks is just too much to ask for. Sword Art Online is perfectly content recycling ideas and visuals, knowing the fan base will praise it anyway. At this point, originality feels optional, and effort feels negotiable. Asuna thinks Kirito went easy on Zekken because she is a girl, but Kirito denies it. He claims he was going all out. Until the halfway point. And that right, there is the problem with Kirito. He is so overpowered that he cannot lose fair and square. The only way he ever loses is if he conveniently decides not to try. Sword Art Online treats this as drama, but really it just highlights how absurd the invincibility of Kirito is. The character is designed to win, and it robs every fight of tension or stakes. And why would Kirito even go easy on a girl? Rosario was a girl, and he did not show her any mercy. Lifa is a girl, and Kirito was not very nice to her when they first met either. This line is just a dumb excuse to make Kirito seem noble or heroic. Sword Art Online loves throwing in meaningless character virtues that are only there to inflate the ego of Kirito, not to actually make sense in the context of the story. It highlights how the show prioritizes making Kirito look good over consistency, fairness, or logic. It turns out that the real name of Zekken is actually Yuki, which is already the last name of Asuna. It is not even spelled or pronounced differently in English. Really? Why would the author choose this name for another character? It only adds unnecessary confusion. There are literally thousands of other Japanese names available to pick from. Or they could have made up a unique and original name from scratch. Sword Art Online seems to love creating headaches for the audience with these careless naming choices. It does not deepen the story, it just makes you stop and wonder why anyone thought this was a good idea. It would be like calling one character Smith and then giving another character the exact same last name, just to confuse everyone. You could do it technically, but why would you? Why would any competent writer do that? It adds nothing and only frustrates the audience. Sword Art Online seems to think that minor details like this will make the story feel connected or clever. Instead, it just makes the world feel sloppy and the writing lazy. Also, the Japanese voice actress of Yuki is named Yuki as well. Did they hire her because of her name or because of her talent? Sword Art Online has a knack for these weird coincidences that make you wonder if anyone actually thought things through. It is amusing and a little ridiculous, and it makes you question whether casting decisions were made logically or just for convenience. Additionally, Yuki is a fairly common name in Japan. So, how did she even get that as her username in the game? It makes no sense. This is a perfect example of one of the many problems with the characters in this show. Everyone has these flawless, simple usernames that sound cool and original, as if the internet magically bends to their will. Nobody has to deal with the real-world hassle of a name already being taken, or adding numbers, underscores, or weird spellings just to snag a login. Sword Art Online keeps giving its characters these absurd conveniences to make them look perfect, and it just highlights how unrealistic and lazy the writing can be. The names in other movies and shows based on gaming are far more realistic than Sword Art Online. Take Ready Player One, for example. The female lead goes by Art3Miss, which actually feels like a plausible username someone would pick in a virtual world. Sword Art Online, on the other hand, gives its characters perfect, generic names that no one in a real MMO could just claim without it already being taken. It breaks immersion and makes the world feel less believable. Rare names in online games are extremely desirable and can even cost a lot of money to acquire. They are not just sitting around waiting for anyone to take them. Sword Art Online treats usernames like a magical convenience where everyone gets exactly what they want without effort. In the real world, claiming a common or cool name would be a battle, not a freebie. It is just another example of the show ignoring reality to make its characters look effortlessly perfect. Yuki is also her first name in real life. The author cannot even be bothered to come up with a different name for her in the game. He already did the same thing with Asuna. She uses her real-life first name as her username, and now Yuki does too. It just screams laziness. In an online game where usernames are supposed to be creative, rare, and personal, several characters just use their real name with no effort or thought. It makes the world feel fake and rushed. Like the author could not be bothered to think past the first draft. The duel finally begins, and we actually get an action scene. Too bad we are already 18 minutes into a 23-minute episode. By this point, most of the audience has probably already gotten bored and stopped watching. Why would you wait until the very last moment to include some actual action? That is like making people eat 4 courses of garbage and then saying, "Oh, dessert is ice cream." Nobody would stick around for that. Sword Art Online has a talent for mismanaging pacing, turning moments that should be thrilling into afterthoughts. The action exists, but by the time it arrives, it is too little, too late. If bashing this show was not my job, I would have stopped watching in the last episode, let alone give this episode a chance. There's no way I would stick around with this monotonous slog, when there are literally millions of other shows or movies I could be watching instead. This is not entertainment. It is a chore. Sword Art Online treats filler, pointless drama, and lazy storytelling as if they are worth our time. But honestly, it is exhausting. The pacing, the character nonsense, the endless whining, it all makes you want to just close the tab and never look back. The duel is so dumb and boring. Yuki is so overpowered, she does not even have to do much. She just stands there, swings a few attacks, and somehow everything goes her way like magic. Sword Art Online tries to make it seem intense, but there is zero tension. When one character is that unstoppable, the fight becomes predictable and pointless. You are just watching a show flex its overpowered hero instead of actually enjoying a real duel. And the fact that they chose to have this duel on the ground instead of in flight is a terrible choice. In a game with flight, why would you make the fight just a boring ground battle like any other game? It feels like the writer got lazy, or maybe the animators did not want to bother creating a flying scene. Either way, it robs the duel of excitement and makes it feel like a missed opportunity. Sword Art Online loves taking things that could be spectacular and turning them into bland, pedestrian moments. The potential for epicness is there, but the execution is just terrible. This duel would have been so much cooler if flying was involved. Imagine the characters dodging attacks in midair, swooping around each other and landing spectacular strikes from above. Instead, we get them stomping around on the ground like it is any other boring game battle. Sword Art Online had the chance to make this fight visually insane and exciting, and they completely wasted it. Flight mechanics could have added real stakes and creativity, but instead the duel is flat, predictable, and utterly underwhelming. What is the point of even including flying in this game when most of the time the characters do not even use it? They did not fly at all in the previous arc because of some dumb restriction in that realm, and they choose not to fly now either. So why is flying even a thing? It exists just to look flashy on paper, but in practice it is ignored and underutilized whenever the writers feel like it. Sword Art Online keeps introducing mechanics that sound cool but are inconsistently applied. It makes the world feel arbitrary and the rules meaningless, which is frustrating for anyone trying to pay attention. Asuna punches Yuki in the stomach. What was even the point of this? It does nothing to change the outcome of the fight. If Asuna had dual-wielded like Kirito, she might have actually had a chance of winning. Instead, the scene makes her look weak and the duel feel one-sided. Sword Art Online constantly handicaps its female lead to make the overpowered hero look better, and this is just another example. Asuna does not stand a chance against Yuki, which is absolutely no surprise. We were already told how powerful Yuki is, so there was literally no way for Asuna to beat her. If she somehow won, it would have just made her seem absurdly overpowered and the writing inconsistent. Plus, Asuna is not even a DPS class. She's an Undine, which is more about support and healing. She was at a disadvantage from the start. It is like trying to play as Mercy in Overwatch and expecting to out-DPS a Genji or a Tracer. Not gonna happen. Sword Art Online tries to make the duel dramatic, but the outcome is completely predictable. And the class mechanics only underline how lopsided and unbalanced the fight really is. This is exactly why having different races with their own strengths and weaknesses in a game can be terrible design. People who choose a race built for support will never be able to go head-to-head in a one-on-one fight with a race that is all about DPS. It makes duels predictable and unbalanced. Sword Art Online tries to make fights dramatic, but when the mechanics are this lopsided, the outcome is obvious from the start. Instead of creating tension, the game design just hands some characters a guaranteed advantage and robs the story of any real stakes. Yuki stops her attack right before hitting Asuna, and the duel ends. Apparently, Yuki has seen enough and decides that Asuna is the one. What was the point of this? What even makes Asuna so special? Is it just because the writer decided she was? There's no build-up, no logic, no reason for Yuki to suddenly declare Asuna as the chosen one. Sword Art Online treats these moments as dramatic and emotional, but it is really just arbitrary. The duel ends not because of skill or story, but because the author waved a magic special character wand. It is frustrating and makes the whole fight feel meaningless. Yuki did not even have to use her 11-hit original sword skill combo against Asuna. That just makes it even more absurd. She is so ridiculously powerful that she does not need a gimmick at all. She could win with basic attacks if she wanted. Sword Art Online tries to make her look flashy and impressive, but the fact that she can destroy opponents effortlessly without even trying highlights just how overpowered she is. It kills any tension in the fight and makes the duel feel pointless. Yuki and Asuna fly away. Yuki wants Asuna to help them with something, and then the episode just ends. Oh, come on. They do not even tell us what it is Yuki needs help with. The creators expect the audience to tune in next week like they are owed answers or something. Who in their right mind would actually continue watching this boring, padded nonsense? Sword Art Online loves dangling vague promises of plot just to keep people hooked. But when the payoff is this thin, it only leaves the viewer frustrated and wondering why they are wasting their time. I am annoyed by that, and I do not even have to wait a week to find out. I could just watch the next episode right now since all the episodes finished airing a long time ago. Sword Art Online still structures episodes like we have to suffer through cliffhangers, even though binge-watching removes any tension. The artificial suspense feels even more pointless when you know the whole story is already out there. It is just another reminder of how the show pads runtime and drags out meaningless drama, hoping we will act like it is exciting. If the show did not waste time on boring exposition-dumping scenes, the characters would be much further along in the plot by now. But of course, it needs to pad the runtime so we get pointless filler while the important stuff gets shoved into the next episode. Sword Art Online has a talent for stretching moments that could take 2 minutes into 10, just to make the episode feel full. The result is slow pacing, endless talking, and a lot of frustrated viewers wondering why the story is not moving. And why did they even need to fly away to talk in private? They could have just sent a private message like normal people. Sword Art Online treats every conversation like it needs to be dramatic and visual, even when it makes no sense. Flying off for a chat adds nothing to the story, and it just feels like the writers wanted to pad the scene with unnecessary animation. The result is a moment that is supposed to be important, but ends up feeling completely arbitrary and silly. Yuki literally drags Asuna away by force. How would that even work in a real game? In any actual online game, that would be awful design. Players do not lose agency just because another player feels like grabbing them. Being able to physically kidnap another player would be griefing taken to an absurd extreme. If this were a real MMO, people would exploit it constantly, dragging players away from quests, forcing them into PvP zones, or just trolling them for fun. No developer would ever allow that because it completely destroys player autonomy. Once again, Sword Art Online ignores basic game mechanics so the plot can happen. The rules bend or disappear whenever the writers want a cool or dramatic moment, even if it makes the game world feel fake and poorly thought out. It is also funny how UA calls Asuna mommy. Once again, the voice actress of this character is much older than the voice actress of Asuna in real life. The show expects us to buy this as cute or heartfelt, but knowing the real-world ages makes it just plain absurd. It is one of those little details that makes you step back and question the logic of the casting choices. Sword Art Online keeps piling on these moments that are supposed to feel normal or sweet, but when you notice the actual context, it comes off as unintentionally hilarious and a little creepy. The other characters were supposedly concerned about Asuna, but if that is true, why did they not fly after her? It makes no sense for them to just stand there and watch their friend get dragged away by a stranger. In any logical scenario, they would intervene immediately. Sword Art Online loves moments that are dramatic, but completely ignore basic common sense. The characters in action here just highlights how the show prioritizes plot contrivances over believable reactions. There are several obelisks on the outside of the floating castle. But wait, those are from Egypt. What are they even doing in a game that is supposedly based on Norse mythology? Sword Art Online loves mixing random cultural references like it adds depth, but it just comes off as sloppy world building. Instead of creating a consistent, believable setting, they throw in whatever looks cool, even if it makes zero sense. The result is a floating castle that is more of a hodgepodge of unrelated ideas than an immersive world. Sword Art Online absolutely butchers Norse mythology beyond recognition. It does not even try to stay consistent to the source material. You have Excalibur, which is from Arthurian legend. You have Minotaurs, which come from Greek mythology. You have pyramids, which are from Egypt, and now we have obelisks, which are also from Egypt. At this point, the setting is not inspired by Norse mythology at all. It is just a random pile of mythological leftovers thrown together with no thought or care. The world feels less like a cohesive fantasy and more like a bargain bin of ideas the writer grabbed because they looked cool. If you're going to base a game on a specific mythology, maybe actually commit to it. Instead, Sword Art Online turns everything into a sloppy mashup that makes no sense and breaks immersion even further. The writer clearly chose Norse mythology because it is in the public domain, then could not be bothered to actually research it. Instead of learning the myths, the themes, or the world building, he just tossed in whatever random mythological elements he felt like using. Greek monsters, Egyptian structures, Arthurian swords, none of it matters. That is not creative freedom. That is laziness. If you're going to borrow mythology, the bare minimum is understanding what you are borrowing. Sword Art Online does not even try, and it shows. If the writer had invented his own world, I would not complain about this at all. He could throw in whatever he wanted and call it creative world building. But if you are explicitly basing your game on Norse mythology, then I expect it to actually be consistent with Norse mythology. That is the whole point of using an existing mythos. This would be like making a story about Greek gods and then randomly adding Thor, Anubis, and King Arthur because why not? At that point, it is not an adaptation or an homage. It is just a mythological junk drawer. Furthermore, even the Norse mythology elements in this game are not accurate. Apart from the names, they share nothing in common with the actual myths. It is like the writer looked at a list of cool-sounding words and slapped them into the game without understanding what they actually mean or represent. Sword Art Online treats the mythology as decoration rather than substance, which makes the world feel shallow and completely unconvincing. Fans of the show must not know anything at all about mythology, because even a casual mythology fan should be insulted by how inaccurate all of this is. Sword Art Online throws around names, creatures, and artifacts like a toddler dumping toys out of a box, expecting everyone to clap and be impressed. If you know even a little about the myths, it is painfully obvious how little effort went into this world. The mythology here is just a hollow prop to make the game feel cooler than it actually is. As is tradition, let us go through some Reddit comments from when this episode first aired. The first comment mentions how you cannot blame Kyuko. She researched Kirito, so she knows he keeps leading a harem that includes a little sister haremet. Frequents a bar, pretends to be a girl to get help in MMOs. Cannot even remember those he killed, made it flow endlessly to make it worth a 2-year wait, hacks games, and the list goes on. The commenter says they would be concerned as well. That is absolutely hilarious to think about. Like I said in the video, Kirito is a terrible character. He does everything wrong, acts overpowered and entitled, and yet the show treats him like a flawless hero. The Reddit comment perfectly sums up why anyone with a brain would side-eye this guy. Another commenter joked about pulling the mom into the harem as well. That would be absolutely hilarious. Kirito would not just have Asuna in his harem, he would have her mom too. Sword Art Online has an obsession with Kirito and his ridiculous harem power that reaches levels which are absurd, creepy, and unintentionally funny all at once. It is the kind of joke that perfectly captures how over-the-top and ridiculous the show is when it comes to Kirito. Another commenter thinks that the mother did bring up some valid points. The conversation as a whole showed a huge development and revealed Asuna. actually dealing with social problems related to video games and the death trap that was OW. It is one of the bright highlights. That makes me think Sword Art Online could have had so much more potential if it actually explored how the young and old interact through developing technology that can potentially be abused. Instead, the show wastes time screwing around, picking up girls, and beating up everyone else in the game. I agree with them. It is too bad that is not what Sword Art Online is actually about. The writer does not have the skill or the talent to explore that topic and prefers to focus on shallow action and overpowered characters. Other commenters think that the writing gets better as the show goes along. I have to strongly disagree with that. The writing is still terrible, and in fact it gets worse as the series continues. Sword Art Online never learns from its mistakes. The pacing, character logic, and plot decisions remain consistently sloppy, and later episodes only pile on more nonsensical moments. Any hope that the show would improve is quickly dashed as the series trudges forward, leaving the audience with more frustration than entertainment. There are some people who are stoked for this arc. They like everything about it, including the opening, the art, and the story. What more could they ask for? Well, how about good writing, good characters, and a coherent story? Sword Art Online keeps trying to dazzle viewers with flashy visuals and catchy music. But when it comes to the fundamentals of storytelling, it falls flat every time. Fans can be excited all they want, but none of that changes the fact that the narrative and character development are still painfully lacking. It is funny how people actually like this arc. Their standards must be rock bottom. This is easily the worst show I have ever seen. You could not make a worse show if you tried. If they made a live-action adaptation of Sword Art Online with Tommy Wiseau playing every role by himself, I would genuinely be more interested in watching that. At least that would be hilarious. Sword Art Online tries to be serious and dramatic, but it ends up absurd, tedious, and unintentionally hilarious in all the wrong ways. This arc is a perfect example of everything that is wrong with the series. A commenter mentioned that it felt like the episode only lasted 5 minutes. I am not sure if that is a good or bad thing. Are they saying it was so quick and exciting that time flew by? Or are they saying that only 5 minutes of important stuff actually happened? Either way, I do not agree with them at all. The episode was so boring and dull, packed with pointless filler scenes, that it felt more like 5 hours than 5 minutes. Sword Art Online has a talent for stretching nothing into long, tedious runtime, and this episode is a perfect example. This commenter thinks the show did a complete turnaround and that the quality is amazing now, like the first arc. They say the story is deeper, the fighting is great, the music is fantastic, and they have not been this excited in a long time. Hard disagree. This arc is terrible, just like the first arc. The story is not deep. It is slow, boring, and filled with pointless filler. The fighting is dumb and makes no sense, and I am not excited at all. Sword Art Online continues to prioritize flashy visuals and fan service over coherent storytelling or meaningful action. Any claim that this arc is better is simply ignoring all the glaring flaws that remain. It is funny how the other arcs in Sword Art Online have been so terrible that just because this arc is not as bad, people suddenly treat it like the greatest thing ever. That is how low the bar is. Sword Art Online has consistently set expectations so poorly that anything slightly competent seems amazing by comparison. It is less about actual quality and more about viewers being grateful for something that does not actively annoy them. This commenter thinks that this was the best episode in the entire series. Is that a joke or something? This episode was bland and boring. Sword Art Online manages to make even moments that are supposed to be important or exciting feel flat and uninteresting. Calling this episode the best only highlights how low the standards have become for the show. This commenter thinks that Zekken looks like waifu material. Oh, how wrong they are. It is so funny to go back and read comments like this after you have already seen the show and know exactly what is going to happen. Sword Art Online has a way of making viewers believe in certain characters for all the wrong reasons, only to undercut those expectations in ways that are either ridiculous or completely predictable. This commenter wonders what happened to Recon. Who even cares? He was such an annoying character that I am honestly glad he is gone. How could anyone possibly miss him? It goes to show that even the worst characters somehow manage to have fans. Sword Art Online has a knack for creating these irritating side characters who exist mostly to clutter the story, and yet somehow people get attached to them. It is baffling, frustrating, and kind of hilarious all at once. This commenter is happy because Kirito is absent from the opening and thinks he will not appear in this arc. Unfortunately, that is not the case. He is still a big part of the arc, even if the focus is slightly less on him. I wish he would disappear completely, but unfortunately, I do not have a magic lamp. Sword Art Online loves keeping Kirito in the spotlight, no matter how unnecessary or annoying he is, and this arc is no exception. This commenter thinks that this arc is incredible and doubts that people will rant about it. Well, buddy, you clearly have not met me. Not only will I rant about it, I will rip it apart scene by scene. Every line, every decision, every ounce of lazy writing is getting examined. I will destroy everything the fans hold dear. If someone genuinely believes this arc is untouchable, then this video exists solely to prove them wrong. The more people act like this arc is above criticism, the more I want to criticize it. Nothing about Sword Art Online has ever earned immunity from scrutiny, and pretending this arc is flawless only makes its problems stand out even more. If anything, the blind praise just invites a closer look, and this show does not hold up well under one. The reason I am going so hard on this arc is because the fans treat it like some sacred text that everyone is required to enjoy. They do not seem to understand that people can have different opinions and that disliking this show is allowed. Not everyone is obligated to clap and cry just because the anime tells them to. I am here to remind them of that simple fact. This arc is not holy, it is not untouchable, and it absolutely deserves criticism. This commenter thinks that Yuki is related to Asuna since Yuki is also her family name. That is not true, but that is exactly why I said that choosing the name Yuki for this character is a dumb choice. It creates unnecessary confusion for people who are just trying to follow the story. Sword Art Online has a habit of making simple things complicated for no reason. And naming two unrelated characters the same thing is a perfect example of that sloppy writing. This commenter gets teary every time they see the opening. Why? It is so bland and boring. What is there to be emotional about? Sword Art Online does not earn any of that sentiment. The opening tries to feel dramatic and heartfelt, but without solid writing or meaningful stakes, it is just a collection of generic visuals and forgettable music. Getting emotional over this is baffling. This commenter wishes they had added the possibility of death so the story would be more intense. I agree with them. With no real consequences, everything is just boring. If the characters die, they just simply respawn and try again, so there are no stakes. Sword Art Online tries to create tension and drama, but without actual risk. The action feels meaningless and the audience has nothing to worry about. This commenter is not sure why we are supposed to care about the real life of Asuna. I agree with them. Like I said in the video, those scenes are just pointless filler. The show is called Sword Art Online, not Rich Girl Problems. Spending time on the wardrobe of Asuna, her mansion, or her dinner table does nothing to advance the story and only highlights how off track this arc is. They got 17 downvotes, but they are absolutely right. It is sad and pathetic how Sword Art Online fans downvote anyone who dares to have any criticism. This person was not even being overly negative like I am, and yet the fan base still lashes out. It perfectly shows how fragile the community is when it comes to defending this flawed show. If the fans got so upset over that comment, then they will definitely not like my video bashing this arc. I am far more negative and cynical toward it than all of those comments combined. Sword Art Online fans tend to defend the show tooth and nail, but I am here to tear it apart scene by scene. If they thought a simple comment was controversial, they are in for a world of frustration with what is coming. This commenter is actually upset that Kirito is not the protagonist of this arc. They do not like Asuna. It is funny how some people are such die-hard Kirito fans that they miss seeing him in every scene. Personally, the less I see of Kirito, the better. Sword Art Online constantly glorifies him to the point of absurdity. So having an arc where he is less central is actually a relief. And that concludes the video on the second episode of this arc. Once again, my video is many times longer than the actual episode itself. When I can come up with more criticisms to talk about than the show actually lasts, that is a major problem. It perfectly illustrates how padded, pointless, and poorly executed this series is. Sword Art Online keeps giving me material to complain about, and I am starting to wonder if the creators are intentionally trying to make life difficult for anyone who actually cares about good storytelling. We are still far from over. There are several episodes left in this arc, and I am going to rip every single one of them apart. I will not go easy and I will not hold back. Every flaw, every lazy decision, and every piece of bad writing is getting called out. This arc is not surviving the rest of this critique, and it has absolutely earned what is coming. If you're still a fan of this arc after watching my videos, I have to ask why. What about this awful show do you actually like? Is it the endless filler, the lazy writing, or the overpowered characters who make no sense? Maybe it is the bland character designs, the inconsistent mythology, or the cringe-worthy dialogue. Whatever it is, I genuinely want to know how anyone can watch this and think it is good. Because from where I am sitting, everything about this arc is frustrating, boring, and completely undeserving of praise. This arc is not even in that so bad it is good territory. It is just boring, bland, and frustrating. There is nothing to even enjoy ironically. There are no entertaining mistakes to laugh at, no unintentional comedy, no chaotic fun. Just endless padding, tedious dialogue, and overpowered characters doing nothing interesting. It is the kind of bad that makes you check your watch and wonder why you are still watching. It feels like I am Sisyphus from Greek mythology, endlessly pushing the same boulder uphill. Except the boulder is Sword Art Online, and it keeps rolling back down every time I think it cannot get worse. But I must continue. I have to keep going and keep ripping this show apart piece by piece. Nobody else seems willing to do it properly, so I guess it falls to me to carry that burden. A thankless task, but someone has to point out how bad this series really is. And no, this arc does not suddenly get better. It is not one of those shows that starts off slow and then turns amazing. From start to finish, it is bad. There is no improvement, no hidden depths waiting to be revealed, no twist that redeems the pacing or writing. Every episode is just more of the same bland, poorly thought out nonsense, and it never gives you a single reason to care. You could say that I am pedantically nitpicking everything, and you would be absolutely correct. Guilty as charged. I am not even going to pretend otherwise. This is not an accident, and it is not a misunderstanding. This is a deliberate, methodical excavation of every crack, inconsistency, and half-baked idea this show tries to hide under flashy animation and sad music. I am going to nitpick everything. Every line of dialogue. Every game mechanic that collapses the moment you think about it for more than 5 seconds. Every convenient excuse the writing pulls out when it needs to move the plot forward without doing any actual work. Nothing is too small to escape scrutiny. If it exists on screen, it is fair game. No stone will be left unturned, not because I enjoy being unfair, but because this show has spent years being treated with kid gloves. Fans hand wave away its problems, critics soften their blows, and somehow it keeps getting a free pass. I am here to do the opposite. To slow down, zoom in, and point at the mess everyone else is so eager to ignore. If that makes me pedantic, then fine. Pedantry is what happens when a story cannot survive close inspection. And if this show falls apart under nitpicking, that is not my fault. That is the fault of the writing. If you thought CinemaSins was pedantically nitpicking everything, then you have not met me yet. CinemaSins at least pretends it is satire and just joking. I am not. This is not a playful ding counter or a sarcastic bell every time someone breathes wrong. This is a full-scale autopsy. CinemaSins skims the surface. I am going to dig until I hit bedrock. I am going to pause, rewind, and ask questions the show clearly hoped no one would ever ask. Not for laughs, not for cheap points, but because the moment you actually examine this thing, it starts collapsing in on itself. So if you think that was nitpicky, buckle up. That was the warm-up. This is where the real dissection begins. The most pathetic part is that the Sword Art Online fans see me as a bad person simply for criticizing their favorite show. Not for lying, not for harassing or attacking anyone. Not for doing anything immoral. Just for saying that the thing they like is bad. That alone is apparently enough to turn me into some kind of villain in their minds. That is just sad. It shows how fragile their attachment to this show really is. If a piece of media cannot survive criticism without its fans treating dissent like a personal attack, then that is not passion. That is insecurity. A confident fan base laughs off criticism or argues back with actual points. This one just clutches its pearls and screams betrayal. I am not attacking them as people. I am attacking a show. The fact that they cannot tell the difference says far more about them than it ever will about me. The real problem is the fans who base their entire identity on this show. When a piece of media stops being something you enjoy and starts being who you are, every bit of criticism feels like a personal attack. At that point, I am not criticizing a TV series anymore. In their minds, I'm criticizing them as a human being. That is why they react the way they do. Not with counter-arguments. Not with thoughtful discussion. Just outrage and defensiveness. If Sword Art Online is a core pillar of your personality, then admitting it has flaws would mean admitting something uncomfortable about yourself. So instead of doing that, they lash out at the critic. It is honestly unhealthy. Liking a show should not be a personality trait. You should be able to enjoy something and still accept that it is flawed, or even accept that other people think it is terrible. If your sense of self collapses the moment someone says your favorite anime is badly written, then the problem is not the critique. The problem is the identity you built around it. Sword Art Online fans need to grow up and get off their high horse. The way some of them act, you would think they are defending a sacred text instead of a deeply flawed anime series. Any criticism is treated like heresy, and anyone who does not bow down and praise the show is immediately labeled as ignorant, hateful, or just not smart enough to understand it. It is exhausting. Enjoying a show does not make you enlightened, and liking Sword Art Online does not put you above criticism. Having taste is not the same thing as having standards, and blind loyalty is not the same thing as thoughtful appreciation. If you cannot handle someone saying your favorite anime is bad without throwing a tantrum, then the problem is not the critic. It is your inability to separate your ego from a piece of fiction. At some point, people need to accept that media is not immune to scrutiny. Sword Art Online is not special. It is not above analysis. And its fans are not martyrs just because someone dared to say it is poorly written. There are plenty of people who criticize my favorite shows and movies. I do not try to silence them, and I do not attack them. I do not care. Unlike Sword Art Online fans, I do not base my entire identity on any piece of media, so it does not bother me at all when people disagree with my opinion. If someone thinks a show I like is terrible, that is totally fine. The world keeps spinning. My personality does not collapse. And my sense of self-worth does not shatter just because a stranger on the internet had a different take. Liking something is not a personality trait, and disliking something is not a moral failing. That is the difference. When your identity is not glued to a franchise, criticism feels like what it actually is. Just an opinion, not an attack. Not a personal insult. Just someone else thinking a Japanese cartoon is bad and moving on with their life. The funny thing is that after just 2 episodes, my analysis is already longer than the show itself. That alone should tell you something is deeply wrong. When a 20-minute episode generates more confusion, contradictions, and unintentional comedy than actual content, the criticism practically writes itself. And we still have 5 more episodes to go. 5 more episodes of recycled assets, broken game logic, exposition dumps disguised as conversations, and characters standing around nodding like they are being paid per line of dialogue. At this rate, the critique is going to turn into a full-length documentary while the show keeps sprinting past its own problems and hoping nobody notices. When your commentary outpaces the source material before you even hit the halfway point, that is not dedication on my part. That is a symptom of how much this arc gives you to rip apart. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more Sword Art Online hate videos. Let us keep the hate going strong. Never settle for bad writing, lazy storytelling, or overpowered characters who make the show feel like a parade of conveniences. Together, we can hold this series accountable, one painfully padded episode at a time.